Hey, it's Dr. Mike T. Nelson here again, back with another edition of the Flex Diet Podcast. And today I've got a really fun one, more on the psychology and neurologic aspects of training and a peak performance with Dr. Chris Friesen. And he's from Canada, eh? We talk about all different aspects of performance. He's worked with everyone from entrepreneurs to high-level athletes, such as goalies in hockey. He used to be a goalie in hockey himself. And we focused more on the neurologic side, initially talking about some neurofeedback techniques. And if you've never had neurofeedback, it is the most bizarre feeling that you're hooked up with all these electrodes to your brain, and you're watching usually a video, and the video will kind of get a little bit hard to see. It'll kind of fade out. The sound will kind of fade out, and then it'll kind of come back in again. And that's tuned to different aspects of your brain that they're trying to change. And it is a bizarre feeling for that to be happening unconsciously. So we talk about what exactly are you doing in neurofeedback. We discussed HRV, the nervous system, autonomic regulation, control of state. And at the end, we get into some super fascinating stuff about the limbic system and how you want to use more of your prefrontal cortex than your limbic system. Sort of use the newer parts of your brain as a human. And I even quizzed him on the concept of physiologic flexibility. I didn't know his answer was going to be a positive or not, so you can listen in for that. And it was super fun conversation, so check it out. As always, brought to you by the Flex Diet certification. Go to flexdiet.com, flexdiet.com, and you'll be able to get onto the daily newsletter via the waitlist there. And as soon as it opens up next time, we will let you know. The Flex Diet certification is a ranking of 8 different interventions for recovery and nutrition, and a complete system of how to use them based on the concepts of metabolic flexibility and flexible dieting. So let's get into the podcast. Here we go. Awesome. I'm here with Dr. Chris Friesen. Did I get that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And just give us a little background of how you got into what it is you're doing now, because you're doing a whole wide variety of different things that I know are kind of related, but just someone looking on the outside, you're like, well, I don't really see how all those kind of fit together.
Yeah, so I see these as all being connected. I work. I'm a licensed clinical and neuropsychologist. I'm also trained and licensed as a forensic psychologist. I don't do that work anymore with criminals. I do police work. I do for 2 police services here in Ontario, Canada, and I still do a lot of brain work, which is called neuropsychology, which is a subspecialty within clinical psychology that specializes in the brain. And I still treat people with anxiety and depression. About 40% of my clientele are peak performers of some sort, whether they're executives, whether they're athletes, whether they're entrepreneurs, and basically help them really focus on, if there was one underlying connection between everything I do and the way I do things is basically learning to modify your psychology, physiology, and neurology to optimize your performance. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool. And yeah, when I first started working with clients, I was very much on the physiology side. And I was like, oh, it's just all physiology. This isn't going to be so hard. And then the first couple of clients, I was just like, oh my, why am I going to school for exercise physiology at the time? I'm like, I should be a psychologist, because this has way more to do with psychology than it does physiology in terms of what I do with, clients on a day-by-day basis. So I ended up going back and just started taking neurobiology courses for fun to try to figure out, like, well, how does the brain work? How does it take information? How does it process it? Like, what is the client sort of, quote unquote, thinking, like how are the different processes like that. So yeah, awesome.
It does get complicated. Behavior change is quite complicated, and that's everyone runs into this. Is we got this knowledge, and often we're motivated to use it on ourselves, and we have some people that are really super motivated. Then we get people that we explain it to them, and we assume that, like us, we would do it, and it's actually for a lot of people challenging to make any changes.
Yes, very true.
Yeah.
So one of the techniques I think you talked about is neurofeedback, correct? And do you want to explain a little bit about what exactly is neurofeedback?
Sure. Neurofeedback is essentially what we call operant conditioning, which is Skinner, not Pavlov, but Skinner. So this is the idea that we get reinforced for doing certain behaviors, and we are more likely to repeat those behaviors if we're reinforced. There's more than that. There's punishment and things like this, but it's really positive reinforcement. So what it involves is trying to help people learn to regulate their brains. You can go from the sort of peak performance side all the way down to the clinical or neurological side. So, for example, a quick example would be people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, or it used to be called ADD, which is one of the areas that neurofeedback has the most evidence. That and seizure reduction, that has the most experimental and scientific evidence behind it. Essentially, for example, with ADHD, we usually do something called a quantitative Eeg, which is a brain. We call it brain mapping. Essentially, it's an Eeg like you'd get at a neurologist's office or a sleep study, except the neurologist and the sleep study physician or psychologist, sometimes they're psychologists that run these, they are looking at the raw waveforms of the EEG, looking for, like a neurologist would look for seizures, for example, spikes and waves and things like this. Sleep experts are looking for sleep stages and other things. And what we're doing is we're taking that data and we're putting it and comparing each individual's brains to a normative sample and seeing if there are deviations. So think of standard deviation units, and we get these sort of colored brain maps. So, for example, in the ADHD, about 80 to 85% of ADHD patients have excessive slow wave activity or under arousal or under activation in the frontal lobe. So put your hand, right above your eyes, and put your whole fist all the way by the top of your ear. That's your whole frontal lobe. It's gigantic, and they have under arousal there. And this is why some people get confused, because individuals who are have ADHD, they tend to be hyperactive, talking fast, all over the place. And people think, well, their brains must be revving so fast. And it's actually the opposite. Their brains are revving so slow. And in a way, it's like self-stimulating. They are have excessive boredom proneness, and they are constantly doing things, talking, changing subjects to feel normal, to self-stimulate in a way. And this is why the medications for ADHD, almost all of them are stimulant medications, which again would look like, it makes no sense. Why would you give someone who's so hyper a stimulant? It's because what it does, it normalizes this underactivation or underarousal in the frontal lobe. And so, for example, if we do a brain map on a patient with ADHD or a peak performer, whoever it is, and if excessive slow wave, what we would do is put a single sensor somewhere on the frontal lobe, usually in around the anterior cingulate, which is sort of, we call FZ or FZ, depending which country you live in. And they watch a video, for example, YouTube, or now we can make it work with Netflix and Disney Plus. Not that kids like the Disney Plus. And what happens is behind the scenes, we're on another computer and we're changing these thresholds. So when their brain's basically performing too slowly, the video will pause or shrink. And when when the brain speeds up, the video will play again. And so they're getting reinforced every time their brains behave in a way that we want it to. So bringing it back towards self-regulating, getting it to be able to engage and turn on its own. And it takes many, many sessions. Maybe, let's say ADHD would take 20 to 40 sessions twice a week for it to have an effect. Just like working out and training, you can't just say, hey, I did an awesome workout, I guess I got huge calves now. No, it doesn't work like that. You're going to have to do this twice a week for, to see any gains, probably 40 times or something like this, just like neurofeedback. It's kind of like you have to, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing. It's an exercise.
And this is all going on unconsciously, correct? I mean, the person watching it is not consciously trying to do anything.
Yeah, I've been doing neurofeedback on patients and clients and myself for years and years and years. I couldn't unconsciously or even consciously, sorry, make myself have particular brain states like this, even though I can do it with feedback. So if I said I want more alpha or less theta or more beta in this part and this part, I can't do that in any conscious way. What it is exactly like you're saying. It's an unconscious process, and I don't mean like Freudian, mysterious. All you have to do is you have to sit there, not move, not try too hard. It's called passive volition. In other words, you passively want the video to play. You have to be interested in the video. This is why it helps to have videos that people are interested in. And that process of just allowing the brain to do what it's going to do own way, it's similar to sleep. So for example, we all know that you can't force yourself to sleep. You can stop moving and stop purposely ruminating. Some people can do this. You just have to stop and let your physiology, let your parasympathetic kick in, and just allow yourself to fall asleep. You get out of your own way. It kind of reminds me, I'll give you a quick example. When I work with peak performers like athletes, I have people come to me and say, hey, I have Olympic trials coming up. I get nervous, or I have the Olympic Games or Pan Am Games, whatever it may be, and I get really anxious. And I'd like you to help me not feel any anxiety. And first thing, I say is, okay, well, first of all, that's impossible.
Yeah.
You feel anxious about things you care about. The problem isn't that the person feels anxiety. The problem is that they think they should not feel anxiety. That's actually the problem. And I do a little paradigm shift, and you might have some knowledge of this as well. There's something called the galvanic skin response, which is a sweat response in you can measure it in our fingers. And what I do, and this is this passive volition idea, I say, hey, look, I'm going to put you, on this computer, hook you up to these electrodes. It's measuring your stress response. This line going up and down the screen, this is your sweat gland activity. When it goes up, sympathetic arousal is kicking in. When it goes down, the sympathetic gas pedal's off. It's not parasympathetic, it's sympathetic turning off. That's how that works. Essentially, I say, okay, I want you to try really hard to make it go down. Let's see. And I'm doing this facetiously, but I'm a much nicer guy in person. So I say, I like you to work really hard to make it go down. And almost all the time, it just keeps going up, even higher. And I say, this is the problem. The harder you try to control your anxiety, you're actually turning on the sympathetic nervous system and making it worse. So now just stare at the screen and just allow the line to do whatever it's going to do. Stop trying. And only then will the line come down. So it's that same idea of passive volition. Just like you show up at the Olympic Games, the harder you try and relax, you're actually making yourself worse. You're tensing up. You're getting more sympathetic activation. You need to let go, allow yourself to feel anxious, and then you can use, the increase what the adrenaline is giving you, right? It's giving you better CO2 max. It's giving you better focus. It's giving you more endurance. CO2 max. It's giving you some more strength. But if you fight it, actually the anxiety is going to go higher and higher, and you're going to go into panic mode, and then you can't use those things. And no big performance occurs when someone is so relaxed like they can take a nap. That just doesn't occur. It's the opposite. You have to feel some level of arousal or activation in order to perform at your best.
Yeah, I have a little phrase I tell clients. It's like, rarely is anything ever solved by just trying harder.
Yes, yeah, it's so true.
Like you need effort. You need to work hard at times, but to just try harder, if that's your solution for everything, it's not going to be too effective.
Well, it's true. This is like our whole, society and the human race is built on making things happen. And this is why monkeys don't fly spaceships. We do. We have a gigantic frontal lobe. That's the main difference. But basically, we are experts at changing our states in a way, or let's say, for example, our back hurts. Well, we can sit down. We're cold. We can put on a jacket. So we can figure this out and do these things. We're problem solvers, basically. But when it comes to emotions, You can't problem solve your emotions in your state at the time. You can't just say, oh, I'm feeling anxious. I'm just going to not feel anxious, or I'm just going to tell myself there's nothing to be anxious about, or say that I'm feeling like I don't have a lot of self-esteem. I'm going to tell myself, look in the mirror, say, you're a really good person, strong person, confident person. That shit doesn't work. If it worked, like I'd be out of a job, right? When it comes to emotions, trying to control them backfires. Allowing your emotions to be there and listening to the information it gives you is what they're there for.
What about your thoughts on, so I do some stuff with trying to change people's states, and you can either do it like biochemically, biomechanically, or kind of biopsych, and that the goal I'm trying to have people before they train, especially people who are a little bit newer to training, is to make sure their state is still good while they're training, so that we're then building a positive association. And I know there's probably a lot of debate even with lifters about can you have a max or a peak performance while still being in a positive state? You know, like kind of the old videos you see of like, it's typical of power lifters getting angry and hitting each other and that kind of stuff. And yeah, you can definitely get some gross motor output from that level of arousal. But what are your thoughts about do you think there's a negative cost to that over time? Do you think you should be exercising even for peak performance more in a positive state, or is there a role for potentially a negative state also?
I think it depends on the person. I think some people, I'll give you an example. So I work with a lot of high-level wrestlers. There's a big wrestling club here near where I live that it's like an Olympic training site. And sometimes with coaches, they don't understand that everyone's physiology, psychology is different. And so you have some people who I'm big into personality. There's a personality dimension that I call susceptibility to negative emotions and stress. The literature calls it neuroticism or emotional stability. And basically, we all vary on this. Most people are near the middle. Some of us are really high. Some are really low. I have a book that helps you identify these and how you can help you achieve your goals. And essentially, people who are high on this trait of negative emotions, they are already very worked up, before any competition, for example. And they'll have some coaches that just come in there and think, oh yeah, you need to be really worked up, especially with wrestling. And they almost like to smack your face, tell you you're a loser, scream in your face. And what happens is you have this, area of peak performance where arousal needs to be sort of moderate, and it just pushes the needle further and further to the right, which puts them into panic mode, and they underperform. But then you can have someone who's kind of like that ADHD style. They have underactivation of the brain, underactivated physiology. They're very low on negative emotions. They probably need that smacking in the face, etc., to get going. So everyone's a little bit different. In terms of being positive or negative, I just think it depends. I think like powerlifting, probably going to a place of anger is going to be important, I would assume, for most people. Chess, probably not. Place of anger probably doesn't help you. I don't know, though. Everyone's a little bit different. And I'm not sure if I'm totally answering your question, but am I on the right track?
Yeah. No, that's cool. So my thought is, if we hypothetically say someone has the same level of arousal, right? So we're at the same level, but somebody gets there via more, I guess for lack of a better word, positive emotions, like I'm going to do this is my best, I'm thinking more positive things versus, the old thing of, imagine something horrible. Like I've heard powerlifters say this, like I can't remember who it was, but I've got 1,000 pounds on my back, and my thought process is, if this potentially is going to kill me if I don't make the lift, right? So more of a darker kind of negative side. And the person was successful completing the lift. I just wonder, I don't know if there'd be any difference in terms of acute performance. Again, depends on the personality. But I wonder, long term, what is the cost of always having to perform at your highest under a negative, quote, set of emotions?
Yeah, that's interesting. There used to be this concept called type A personality, which is pretty much debunked. But these are people who are hard driving, time urgent, ultra competitive, and hostile. These are sort of the main traits that make this up. And basically the idea is cardiologists were just, noticing this with people that they saw who had tended to get heart disease. And it turned out that they did more research, and it turned out just to be the hostility part that would contribute to that. And then there's some newer research sort of, maybe, I wouldn't say contradicting, but putting some doubt into that altogether. So it gets complicated. It's funny how things change over time, and you research it more and it goes away. So I think that arousal is not the same. We used to think so, that, I'm really happy and excited versus I'm really scared. It's the same thing. My heart's racing faster, for example, but it's actually not quite true. The negative emotions have negative effects on our bodies. In terms of I don't know all the details, but cortisol secretion, et cetera, et cetera. So constantly doing that could take a toll on your cardiovascular health in a way. I think that having, but again, like certain particular, I can't imagine it being in powerlifting and thinking positive things. Maybe it would work like that. I'm not totally sure. But I do think that if you're training every day and you're going to that dark place every day, it's probably not the greatest for you. At the same time, though, it's interesting. There's a whole sub area of research with motivation and performance and goal attainment. And it's interesting with people who are high on the personality dimension of negative affect or negative emotionality, or I call it susceptibility to negative emotions and stress. Those people tend to be highly motivated by imagining all the bad things that'll happen if they don't do something. People who are low on this, but also high on extroversion, and everyone knows I'm an introvert versus an extrovert. People don't know that one of the main traits that make up extroversion is positive emotionality. And there are actually different parts or systems in the brain or networks in the brain. Negative emotions and positive emotions are not on a continuum. Unless you're depressed. If you're really depressed and really in a clinical anxiety disorder, they go together. But in everyone else, they're actually not correlated. They're separate traits that have almost a near zero correlation in the normal population. And so people who are high on extroversion, in other words, high on positive emotionality and low on negative emotions, they tend to be motivated by thinking of all the great things that'll happen if they achieve a particular goal. So I think using that and extrapolating that to what we're talking about here, again, knowing that personality part, how awesome will it feel if I can make this lift? How proud I'm going to walk around the gym now, or this gold medal, or whatever it may be. That can be highly motivated and activating. Whereas someone who's really high negative emotions, they may be more activated by thinking about all the bad things, how embarrassing this is going to be, or this kind of thing in terms of motivating them, getting them activated.
Yeah, you just see that even across the board in people in general. Like some people are very much motivated by what others tell them they can't do. And other people, that kind of just crushes them. So related to sort of positive, negative emotions, I've always just wondered about the cost of that person who's highly motivated to prove everyone wrong. Not that they can't achieve a great outcome from that. There's obviously tons of examples where I think you can. I don't know. To me, that always just seems like I don't have any data to prove this, but I just wonder what the long-term cost of that is. And there may not be one at all, right? It may just be that's just how they operate. That's kind of their operating system, and there isn't really a negative side effect to that. I don't know.
Well, you know what that sounds like? There's globally, cross cultures and time, there's 5 global personality dimensions. So I'll quickly run through them, just their names. I said the first 2 of them, extroversion, introversion, 1. Negative emotions versus emotional stability is 2. Openness to experience versus being closed to experience. Conscientiousness, in my book, I call it motivation and self-control, which my definition it's exactly what it sounds like. And then another one's called agreeableness. And so people who are high on agreeableness are very trusting, it's really our attitudes towards others. This is what agreeableness is. We're trusting of others. We're straightforward. We're modest. We're not overly competitive, this kind of thing. People who are low on this, they tend to be competitive. They're not modest. They tend to be suspicious of others. They maybe hold their cards too close at times. And there's good and bad of all the traits. in my mind, and this, not everyone agrees with me, but I believe that all these traits and where you fall are all good and bad. It's not like there's a perfect personality, which is low negative emotions, high positive. That's bullshit. It depends on your life, depends on your job, depends on a lot of factors. But the guys that you might be describing are a bit more on the disagreeable side, who are doing this. Their motivation is coming from, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show that I'm better than you, and like kind of like fuck you. I'm doing this not for some like, oh, this is like, I'm just really challenging myself. I'm doing this because I'm comparing myself to other people who I maybe don't trust to some extent. And there's different variations and depths to this.
Yeah, it also, in a semi-related, reminds me of a good buddy of mine coaches a lot of NFL athletes. And I was just talking to him one day, and we were talking about defensive backs, and I was like, did you ever notice that like they tend to be very, lack of a better word, egotistical, like I'm the greatest, I'm the best, like they'll completely goof a play, and the next one, it's like it didn't even happen. And I said, do you find that interesting? And he's like, yeah, that's generally true. He's like, but if you think about what they actually have to do, they don't know where the other player is going to go. They're trying to prevent them from getting the ball. So they're already at a disadvantage because they can only react to the other person. Yes. And he's like, if you get stuck in that where you did not, deflect the ball, or they made a big play on you, you get stuck there. He's like, there's people who just washed out because they can't get that out of their head, and they keep replaying the sort of the negative outcome of it, and they just don't make it. He's like, paradoxically, if you can, he's like, it looks like they're not caring to the outside person, like they didn't take it serious. But he's like, if you can forget about that and just focus on the next play, then you don't have that sort of negative motor replay all the time running in your brain. So his theory was that they tend to be that personality because they have to almost be that sort of archetype to perform in the situation that they're in, which I thought was super interesting. And again, it's all completely anecdotal, but
well, no, I think you're making some good points there. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I know I used to play goalie, and I work with a lot of hockey goalies.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It's a little bit similar in the sense that you're just reacting. You don't control. I mean, you can smother the puck and get a whistle, but other than that, you're reacting. And what really differentiates from a psychological side, of course, is physical talent and fitness and all these other things that play a huge role, obviously. But that once you get to that top level, it's often these smaller things like your tweaks in your diet and tweaks in your training routine and tweaks in are using an Oura ring to measure HRV, this sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, there you go. And so, but then the psychological side, are you able to reset after each play? Like once they score a goal, and if you can't let go of those thoughts, this thought memory and a trauma, if you want to call it that, it's not really a trauma, but that embarrassment, you're screwed. You're screwed. There's just no way you're going to. Once they score a goal, it's like puncturing a hole in a boat. Water's going to start to leak out, and then there's going to be it's going to weaken the hull or something. The hole's going to get bigger, and it's just going to be downhill. And that's, I mean, you can say this with any sport, with anything in life, of course. But being able to take what you just learned from that play very quickly and say, look, what did I just learn? Like if it's a goalie, it's a guy passes it across, they do a one-timer, and you often goalies tend to lift their stick, and so the 5-hole between the legs opens up, and the puck can go right through there. And it's embarrassing, right? Everyone will fuck the 5-hole right through him, right? That's what it looks like. It's like so embarrassing, but it's a simple thing. And if you can say boom, and even I get the goalies I work with to replay it in their mind really quickly 4 or 5 times, because you just did the motor learning of lifting it, and so that physically doing it is imprinting this motor learning in your brain to lift your stick. And so either physically, I get them often to physically do it 2 or 3 times if they can until the puck's dropped again, or they do it again with their stick flat to kind of reprogram that motor learning, or at least visualize themselves doing it with the muscle twitching as you're doing it to make it as real as possible. People say, and basically, what did I learn? I learned to keep my stick flat. Okay, good. Now I'm ready for the next one. Reset, let that go. go forward. As you know, the zone occurs not when our minds are in the past, not when our minds are in the future. The zone occurs when our mind is fully present in the moment. You can't stay fully present forever. It's impossible. But for the majority of the time, your mind is here and now. And that's with any sport. You can't get under, a deadlift or a squat rack and your mind's not fully there. You got to be fully attentive. It's like riding a motorcycle. You got to be, people like it because you have to be really fully attentive. You can't just be la 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 like you can do in a car. You can die, with just running over a squirrel. You know what I mean? It's so you have to, people like that being in the flow, being in the present moment. So I think that's really important. And I like what you said about these types of different positions, like in football, and different personalities, and being able to do certain things mentally really contributes to how well you do.
Do you think part of that is also related to transitions in the nervous system at a high level, like autonomics? Like how well can you go from more of a parasympathetic to a sympathetic state and back to a parasympathetic state? A good buddy of mine who's works with a lot of top hockey athletes came out to visit him. So I was doing some hands-on work on one of I wouldn't say the guy's name, but he was formerly in the NHL, one of the top people in the NHL, who was known for deflecting pucks midair into the net.
Oh, nice.
Which is just crazy when you think of like how fast everything is moving and that kind of stuff. And he had played for many years at a high level. And it was funny because when we were doing work on him, like if you told him like, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to follow my hand here. We did some eye stuff. Very focused, like very in the moment. But like when we were doing hands-on work, did some scar work, like he friggin' fell asleep. He was either like kind of on, like, okay, here's the task, I'm with you, I'm doing it, or I'm just chilling out, relaxing, there's nothing for me to do. Compared to some other guys, a friend my buddy had worked with too, said that if they're very sympathetic, he's like play 2 to 4 years and then something happens, they get injured, they get burnt out, like they never hear from him again. He said in his experience of people who have played for 5, 10, even 12 years or longer at a high level at the NHL, like those are the people that can go from extremely parasympathetic to extremely sympathetic and then back to being parasympathetic again. Like they can regulate much better than other players.
I love that because, I'm in the process of rebranding just like a new website and doing more corporate talks and things like this, and really trying to what's my philosophy, what's my message, and it really comes down to this. Basically, psychological, physiological, and neurological flexibility, I think, is the key. Of course, physical flexibility, all these things go together.
Yeah.
But being flexible, and for example, Hrv biofeedback is something I do a lot with a lot of my clients, kind of like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out breathing, etc. Using, most clients would use something like Inner Balance from HeartMath. In the clinic, we have high-end like thought technology equipment and Nexus stuff. But what I explain to people is this is not a relaxation technique. Even though you might feel relaxed, just like when I teach meditation, the goal isn't to have a blank mind or feel relaxed. I don't give a shit if you're relaxed. I mean, I do in a way, but that's not the goal. Get this out of your head of what society tells you. Oh, you're meditating, you must be really chill. Or, oh, I'm doing this deep breathing, which Hrv biofeedback isn't actually deep breathing. It's long, slow breathing, but we're training your nervous system to be more flexible. Vagal tone, the barrel reflex, we're training these mechanisms. So there's a short-term effect, just like exercise. You're not training you. You don't get a client and you train them and get them to run on a treadmill and say, how do you feel? I don't feel good. I feel great. It doesn't really matter. The goal isn't how you feel in that second. The goal is how you're going to feel in 6 weeks from now when you walk up the stairs and you don't have to, stop at the top stair and rest because you can't breathe anymore or whatever it may be. So we're introducing this idea of its flexibility. And so some guys are really good at that. So when I think of this hockey player, I don't know who he is, but if I think of this hockey player, if I think again from the brain and sympathetic system, et cetera, and our personalities, they tend to be like a little bit ADHD. Forget about, I don't like that term, but people who are more sensation seeking and extroverted, they tend to have a bit more slow activity, not like an ADHD patient, but it's underactivated. So they have extreme boredom proneness. And so they perform really well in action-packed things. But when you do something boring, their arousal is already so low,
Mm.
sympathetic arousal, you can say, or parasympathetic dominance, or they're let's say in the brain, it's a lot of slow activity. And so it's like a car. It's almost turning off. It's like sputtering out. They need to give it gas. Tell me something exciting to do. Boom, I'm back. And so I do think there's some truth to that, that there might be some more longevity in athletes who have that more flexibility. There's actually new research coming out showing, I forget if it had to do with the autonomic nervous system, but I know for sure it had stuff on variables looking at the brain. So people whose brain were overactivated, the opposite of what we're talking about, it's like revving really fast. We call it fast beta. With those people, I think they did, I'm not sure if it was PET scans. They weren't EEGs. I don't remember the details, but basically they died sooner. They didn't live as long. And it makes sense if your physiology is always so hyped up, like you're describing, sympathetic, dominance, and it's probably guaranteed the brain will be like that as well. I mean, obviously the brain controls the body, but it makes sense. You're think of telomeres and all these things, right? It's only so if the higher it's revving, it's like a car. If your car is revving, close to the red line all the time, it's not going to last long, And I work with a lot of athletes. A lot of people contact me and executives and entrepreneurs because they have a lot of stress and they're feeling a lot of anxiety. And what I say to people is, this is your new normal. It's like you have type 1 diabetes. It's not negotiable whether you take your insulin. You're going to be dead in like a week or two or whatever it takes, if you don't take insulin. If you want to perform at your peak and you experience a lot of stress, in other words, you're high on that personality dimension of susceptibility to negative emotions and stress, if you want to perform better, you have to have a new lifestyle. And this includes like respiratory sinus arrhythmia breathing, which is that 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out that affects heart variability. Yeah, RSA breathing. And it includes other things like meditation. I mean, these are the cheap and easy ones. And then there's like neurofeedback, and then there's photobiomodulation, and then there's other neuromodulation techniques that you're going to need to do these things. Some of them are passive, kind of like a TENS machine, right? Totally passive. And some are exercise, like a physiotherapist giving you exercises. The exercise version, which is like neurofeedback, is going to be better because it can lead to long-term changes. Whereas the other things are going to be, not so, just more temporary. So even myself, like I've done brain maps and stuff on myself many times, and our brain maps are very stable over the lifetime. And I have excessive fast activity in the central part of my brain, which is good and bad. In the past, I couldn't turn my mind off to sleep. I get really excited about things. I can talk fast, just like I'm doing now. And I can come up with lots of great ideas, but I could also, when I was younger, as a teenager, I got really anxious a lot. Like with hockey, as a goalie, and a lot of pressure. And in school, and they call you out in class. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a panic attack. Don't ask me, don't look at me, teacher. And now, once I've done all these things, I'm flexible. When it's time for me now to be like activated, I can get activated. When it's time for me to go to sleep, I can let that go. And it's not really that, volitional. It's flexible. My mind just does it when it needs to do it now. If I need to calm down, I can calm down. If I need to get worked up, I can work myself up pretty easily. And so that flexibility, physiological, psychological, and neurological flexibility, I think is the key.
Cool. I like that. Have you noticed in people that tend to be more on that higher end sympathetic that their resting heart rate is higher and that their aerobic base is lower? That's just something I've noticed anecdotally across the board. And my thought is that it may be related to they're missing more of the vagal tone. They're missing more of that parasympathetic side. Like intrinsically, they just can't up their parasympathetic vagal tone as much as someone else who may be in a similar situation. So they're kind of missing part of that low-end control of the system.
Yeah, that does make some sense. As you know, sympathetic and parasympathetic are actually not really totally correlated systems.
Right.
They're two separate systems. And so sometimes people think I'm either a sympathetic or I'm parasympathetic, which were, for example, the sweat response is purely sympathetic, has no, so far as I know, parasympathetic innervation. So It's basically only a gas pedal on and off, whereas the parasympathetic is a brake. So it's a different pedal, like in a car.
And you can move both pedals at the same time too. Right, so you can adjust the gas down or pull it back, or press the brake in and pull it back, or try to destroy the engine and floor both of them. And
Exactly. But I see this all the time. I don't know this when you said the idea of having aerobic capacity. I don't know. I never test that. What I do know is I do something called psychophysiological stress profiling, which is a thing within the biofeedback, neurofeedback world. Similar equipment to like a lie detector, measuring, again, muscle tension. Lie detection also checks your blood pressure, which is not like biofeedback for blood pressure. You don't actually use blood pressure as the feedback. The best one is respiratory sinus arrhythmia breathing and Hrv biofeedback and temperature training. But so what we do, one of the things I do now with one of the police services here is there's a program across most police services called safeguarding. It's basically a bigger system, a bigger program, but part of the programs usually involve you meet with a psychologist once a year as a quick check-in to make sure the officers, usually the high-risk officers, so I use only the specialty groups, not the beat officers, and make sure they're doing okay, just as a check-in. So traditionally, just it's like a quick conversation. We might give a psychological questionnaire about PTSD symptoms. When they asked me to take that over a few years ago, I thought, and they told me there's going to be 200 or 300 of them a year. And I thought, oh boy, but let's make this better. And so what I decided to do was take what I do with the people in my clinic and bring it to the police station and test them with a psychophysiological stress profile. And basically what that is a sort of standardized test where they sit down, we're measuring HRV, we're measuring heart rate, we're measuring galvanic sweat response, right, skin response, temperature on the finger, we're measuring muscle tension on the forehead and then on the trapezius, and a breathing sensor as well. I think that we have an EEG as well. So what we do is we run them through a series of stressors. So for example, 2 minutes with your eyes open, 2 minutes with your eyes closed to get a baseline, and then we do these mild stressors. Like an example would be a math stressor, which is we get them to count backwards by a random number like 1098 by sevens.
Yep, prime numbers.
And we point it out every time they're wrong. Yeah, so most people, as we look at what happens, after the fact, what does their heart rate do? What do all these different things do? And there's correlations, but some people everyone's a bit different. Some people are heart rate responders, some people are sweat responders, some people are temperature responders, some people are all of them. And a lot of people say, I don't notice anything, but still showing up on these tests. And so I do think that some people are, like you're saying, more sympathetic dominant. And we're always sympathetic dominant, like throughout our day, just to be awake, in a way, just to talk. You have to be sympathetic dominant because sympathetic is not all bad.
No.
There's some research showing that I think it's the I think it's a very low frequency on HRV, the very low frequency range at rest, I believe. If it's too low, because often people think, oh, that's sympathetic, but if it's too low, like on 24-hour readings, that's actually predicts cardiac risk. So you have to have a decent sympathetic arousal or response, but also that parasympathetic. And the way I look at it is training up the parasympathetic through aerobic activity or HRV biofeedback or RSA breathing. That is like, it is the break, but it's people can't change their lifestyle. Like if you're a police officer and you're in the SWAT team, and if you're in a zone or an area where there's lots of, you have to do a lot of work, you're not sitting on your ass all the time, your stress response is going to turn on and off and on and off, and you can't change that. And you want your stress response to kick in. You can't go into that being all parasympathetic dominant. Yeah. You're going to be under aroused, right? And so, but when that's over, to be able to recover from that. And so it's kind of like that, like we all know now, it's not all go, go, go. It's train, go hard, but rest hard. Train hard, rest hard kind of thing, or train smart, of course. And I think that's, what things like the Oura Ring is helping people see. My HRV is low. Or I get lots of people say, if you're on any of the Facebook groups, so the Oura Ring or the biohackers groups, people will say, oh my gosh, they think that the high HRV is great. And the higher, the better. And it's like, well, no. Your HRV will go really high when you're in serious trouble, like you're seriously overtrained or you're really sick, and it's your body shutting down and forcing you basically to recover. So it's really interesting, right? Like with our new technology now, we can actually measure these things. It's not just like hey man, do more squats, or there's biomechanics now, there's physiological, HRV, for example. And just like psychology, it's not just like, hey, how do you feel anymore? I mean, 98% of all psychologists, that's still what we do, but we can actually measure your stress response through HRV, through other things, and get a more objective measure and see if we can make movements. It's just like our brain. We can do brain mapping and see if we can make movements on these things.
Cool. Last two questions. One of the thoughts I've had related to physiologic flexibility, which is awesome that you mentioned that because it's not too many people talk about that, is if we can target like the homeostatic regulators in the body and kind of train their capacity as a way of enhancing sort of the potential of someone, or enhancing, I should say, maybe their capacity, doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be able to use it per se, but just to try to make them a more robust human being. So for example, temperature, right? We have to remain 98.6 Fahrenheit, but we can go into cold water immersion. We can go into sauna. pH, we could do lots of, hydrogen ion producing exercise. We could do some crazy breathing techniques. Fuel systems, blood glucose being regulated, and then carbon dioxide and oxygen. What are your thoughts that if we train kind of within those areas to expand their capacity, do you think that translates into them having just better baseline capacity as a better functioning human, I guess you could say?
100%. I'm absolutely convinced that most of our modern problems are because we don't live in line with what we're genetically designed to live, the environments and our lifestyles, from light exposure in the mornings for circadian rhythm, a lack of blue and bright lights in the evening, same thing. Our cave person ancestors, that's how they lived. They woke up when it was light. They ate more whole foods, natural foods. They did lots of exercise or constant moving, not sitting on their butt all day looking at screens. But of course, I'm not a Luddite. It's you. We have to kind of hack our way through it. I think of us almost like as astronauts. We send people to space. They have to improvise that there's no gravity, so they have to do special workouts. They have treadmills where they're strapped down, right? All sorts of things to make up for that. And I think we kind of live like that bubble now. Think of it, especially now, like in the sort of pandemic times where we have, doing everything on Zoom or Skype. We're sitting down. It's different. So I do think that our mental health, our physical health is deteriorating over time. It's getting better in some ways because of better sanitation, et cetera, but it's deteriorating because of these lifestyle factors. And I'm a strong believer for example, helping, let's say I have an infrared sauna. So every morning I use infrared sauna. I've been taking cold showers for about 5 years. And I see this as I'm actually exercising my blood vessels. There's muscles that cover your blood, that surround your blood vessels, and so your arteries. And so these we're giving them a workout that we don't work out, because think about it. No matter where you live, you can live in Florida, you can live up here in Canada. It's as hot as Florida. In the summers here, I'm near Toronto. I'm in the Niagara region, but in the winters, it's like Michigan, right? It's crazy cold. But we're wearing better and better clothing. Our cars, like our seats now heat up. You can warm up your car before you get in there. So we're not getting these fluctuations in temperature. So we're losing what I call heartiness. So there's a lack of psychological heartiness, because we don't have to feel bored anymore. We can look at our phones to, change our states like this, but never get used to any like emotions like boredom is an emotion. Basically, you need to get used to that, and feeling anxious or scared, or these things are important. They're good for us. Same as our physical body. We don't expose ourselves to extremes of hot and cold anymore. We, exercise. So I really think that doing all these things, from, increasing your fitness, think of high intensity interval training is, a big thing, and you know more than I do about that. I do that myself, but saunas and cold showers, these are training our system to do what it normally did back then. It was really cold at nights, and it was really hot in the day. I think of where we came from in Africa, and so this is our bodies are designed for that, but we live this science fiction nightmare almost. It's getting closer and closer, where we just sit in front of a computer with a bunch of wires and stuff that basically makes us feel good all the time and takes off all the hard work, and our whole society is becoming soft. The police tell me this all the time. It's like, what's wrong with kids these days? They're so soft. Guys are trying to jump off the bridges because their girlfriend, broke up with them. It's like, what is happening? This just didn't happen 20 years or 30 years ago. And I believe we're lacking psychological hardiness and physical hardiness. And this is showing now in our society, from all the diseases we have to the mental health problems we have. And that's why, kind of in a way, biohacking, like we're astronauts, we gotta, I can't run out in the sun naked and get my vitamin D because I have clients, but I can turn on my infrared sauna or my I don't have a Juve, I have a platinum LED, full panel LED and
red light,
infrared and red. Yeah, this stuff, and to do that. And that's, this is it pays off in the short run. You feel better, but it's going to pay off in the long run as well when it comes to chronic diseases that we face.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, my short version is I agree, because you look at all what happens to most physiologic systems when you remove stress is they get worse. Now, of course, we can overload them with too much stress, and now that outstrips your recovery, you're going to have problems. But it's almost like now we're seeing the inverse of it. You use the example of like putting people into space, right? You put them into microgravity. If you don't do any countermeasures at all, like you lose bone mass, muscle, like fluid retention gets all screwy. But it's just the body adapting to that environment. It's like, hey, there's no stress of gravity, so what do I need all this bone and muscle for? I'm not using it. Screw it. It's costing me a lot of expenditure to hold around. Just get rid of it. I think that applies to other systems too. Cool. Awesome. Well, last question. With all your experience and all the groups you worked with, which is really cool, what would be like kind of the top like 2 or 3 things you would recommend our audience do based on your experience? Could be anything.
So assuming your audience, like you said, are basically fitness enthusiasts.
Yeah, more trainers, people looking to perform better at a lower cost, but not sacrifice their health in the process.
I think the first step would be to understand and almost change your philosophy, just like the same thing we've just been talking about. That your goal is to live as close to our ancestors, and I don't mean eating raw food and all these things, but as close to our ancestors as possible. From all those hacks, from getting up, and exposing yourself to light. Of course, like I'm an astronaut, in a way. So I have my 10,000 lux lamp that I use in the mornings for about 20 minutes. You don't look into the lamp; it just has to hit your retinas, but you don't stare into it; it's too bright. Get hormetic stressors, like you're saying. Basically getting yourself to feel uncomfortable, not for crazy amounts of time. You don't need to be in a sauna for 2 hours; it's going to probably kill you, but it could kill you. You go in for 20, 30, 40 minutes, something like this. Challenging yourself by cold showers. I often use this, I call it the cold shower challenge with some of my clients, as long as they're healthy. I say, check with your doctor first in case you have a heart condition. But what happens, your mind is going to come up with all sorts of excuses. And this is another thing that could be a takeaway is, our minds are designed to, part of our minds, we call it the limbic system, is designed to prevent any uncomfortable feelings, physical or mental. And it has a strong voice. It's the most powerful system in our brain because it allows us to survive. And it's really important when someone points a gun at you or a bus is about to run you over for you to not think and your limbic system to basically take over, fight or flight. It's extremely important. We can't turn it off. It's normal. But what happens is your mind, let's say in the cold shower challenge, is going to come up with all kinds of excuses. I need a hot shower. It's going to be too cold. I won't be able to handle it. This is silly. This is your limbic system trying to prevent the short-term pain you're about to experience. But nothing comes if you live your life based on your limbic system. Some people call it the animal mind or the monkey mind. I don't love those terms, but it's basically the limbic system. It only has a short-term perspective, like minutes. It's what's going to reduce pain right now. But that's not really that makes you you. What makes you you is your frontal lobe. Limbic system is deeper in the brain. The frontal lobe is your goals and values. What do I want to do with my life? Who do I want to be? That's your values and your goals. So this is what you want to make your decisions. I have a quote, which is the most successful people make their day-to-day decisions based on their goals and values, not based on their moods, not based on their energy levels, not based on what their mind says they can and cannot do. That's the definition. If you had to ask me one thing that makes people successful, it's people who live by that. So in other words, you wake up in the morning and you're supposed to do high intensity interval training. And I do this almost not every day, but most days of the week. And my limbic system will say, sleep in, you don't need this, etc. All the excuses in the world. And then I have to say, thanks, mind. I know you're trying to protect me, limbic system, but I decided I'm going to do this because it's in my best interest in the long term. So being able to notice when the limbic system is sabotaging us, and for what it is, it's just a bunch of thoughts. It's only short-term protection. Is not going to help you in the long term. Sometimes it's right. When the bus is about to run you over, it's saying, get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Get out of the way. Limbic system, let it control you. Get out of the way. But for most of the time, it's not helpful. So living like our ancestors, learning to identify and notice when our limbic system is activated and telling us things like that we should and shouldn't do that are not based on our goals and values. And when it comes to a simple hack, I'm a big fan of heart rate variability biofeedback, like buying an inner balance, $130 or so is a sensor. It works on iPhones and Androids, and training that baro reflex vagal tone, right? Getting this system more powerful, and the way it helps you is to recover primarily. So I know when I first started doing this training maybe 7 years ago, I used to drive into a big city, and if someone cut me off, just before I trained on this on Hrv Biofeedback, I'd notice my physiology being activated from on the highway, and I get to work. I can still feel my heart rate's up. My blood pressure's probably up a little bit. I can still feel the adrenaline sort of circulating in my bloodstream. And maybe that's 20, 30 minutes later. And then I did the training. After about 5-6 weeks, I started to notice the same things would happen. I get the same initial response, the physiological activation, but after 2-3 minutes, it would go away. And it took me a week or two to figure out, like, oh my gosh, that's vagal tone. Oh my gosh, that's what it's doing. It's helping me get back to a homeostasis, to a steady state. It's pulling me back. It's making me more resilient. It's reducing the damage this is doing to my body. So those are probably the 3 takeaways I would provide.
No, I love that. That's awesome. At a base level, I think of someone who's a more robust, anti-fragile human. They can take and absorb more stressors and then get back to baseline faster and then literally become better because of that insult. Obviously, if you get too much of an insult or too much of a stressor, you're going to break, you're going to have damage. But how much can you train various systems of the body to handle more of those insults? Your goal is not to spend the rest of your life avoiding all of the insults possible, because that's going to drive you the wrong direction, because you're not using the sort of adaptation, use it or lose it principle of the body.
No doubt. And I 100% agree. It's the body and the mind and the brain as well. It's all the same. It's really cool that there's underlying principles that are underneath all of this, that are the key to your psychological well-being, your physical well-being, your happiness, your success. It's I like the quote from the Dalai Lama: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yes. Yeah.
So life is going to be pain no matter what you do. To reach, and I say this in my book, you don't get to the top with no pain. It just doesn't exist. Your life you're going to feel physical and mental pain no matter what decision you make. If you decide to stay on your ass all day or whatever you do, it's still going to be painful. But whether you suffer is whether you do things that are painful for a reason, for good reason. So there's people like Nelson Mandela, I think he was in prison for 27 years, and he was in lots of pain, obviously, taken from his family, et cetera. 27 years of your life, he's basically most of his adulthood he got out when he was really old. And but he would probably say, I had a lot of pain, but I wasn't suffering because I went to prison for a really good reason. I decided to fight against apartheid, and I knew this might be a consequence, and it didn't break him down. He became the prime minister or president of South Africa after that. So, it didn't destroy him, and actually potentially made him stronger. So it's this idea that you can't avoid pain, but if you could experience pain for a good reason, you won't suffer. You're going to do it for a reason, and you're going to grow. And Jim Rohn has a quote too, where he says, he trained Tony Robbins. He's a self-help kind of guru, and he says, you either have the price of discipline or the price of regret. Your choice.
I like that.
So you're going to pay the price of one or the other. And discipline, it hurts in the short term. Regret, will last forever. So this is the choice we make for our day-to-day decisions. Do you want to live in regret, or do you want to basically just pay the price of discipline? And the more you do that, the less problems you have in life, the less suffering you'll experience.
Yeah, I really like the part about the limbic brain too, because once we had the lockdown, I converted a freezer and put cold water immersion in there.
Oh, wow.
In my garage. I'm at home. I'm recording this in Texas right now, so it's 52 degrees this morning, so I ran in a pair of shorts on the beach past all the locals with their hoods and everything else on. I'm like, I'm not running that far. I'm not going to freeze. It's windy, it's cold, but it's not anything where I'm going to damage myself, But
yeah,
it felt horrible. It wasn't fun. And with the freezer, with the cold, it's the same thing. Like you get a little bit more used to it, but man, every day when you get in, it still sucks, But I'm like, okay,
yeah.
Can I make a decision to use my prefrontal cortex to override my limbic system in the short term and still do the thing? Can I get in? Can I control my breathing as fast as possible? Can I control the stressor? And the nice thing about cold is it's something you can do daily. There's not, like, exercise, there's probably only so much capacity you can do, things of that nature. And I found that there's some physiologic benefits to it, but I found the mental benefit was much greater than I thought it was going to be, of that decision of, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, I don't even care if I get out in 30 seconds. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's not the goal. The goal is, can I override that little part of my brain that's like, this is a horrible, stupid idea. Why do you want to go sit in 42-degree water? This is a dumb idea. Can I override that and then kind of build up that, strengthen that muscle, those neuronal associations, so that I'm literally training myself to do the hard thing. And so over time, that will become a little bit easier. It's never going to become super easy, but then you can transfer that discipline to just other aspects of your life too.
I think that's exactly the reason the cold shower challenge is exactly, I say it's for 5 days. No matter what your mind says, you're going to label what your mind says. Oh, I'm noticing the thought that I can't do this, etc. Do it anyways. And there's besides the physiological, and there's neurological in the sense, there's noradrenaline or adrenaline release, things like this. You used to feel activated and awake, and but it's really that sense of what we call self-efficacy, and that's our belief in ourselves. And the more we give in to our limbic system, the more we feel out of control, and the more we don't give into the limbic system and do what we want to do. In other words, not what our limbic system wants, what's comfortable. I mean, what our goals and values, what we really want to do and want to be. Then our self-efficacy goes up, and that's really the key. Is getting back control of our behavior and our minds, and by doing this, challenging ourselves despite what our mind is saying, the limbic system is saying. And basically, like you said, it quiets down the limbic system, because it's saying fire, 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 and eventually it's like the boy who cried wolf. After a while, it's like you realize it's just my brain trying to protect me. It's not real. It's so important, and it's like, I just think it's the absolute key to success, and whatever that means in life. Of happiness, it doesn't mean you feel happy, but you feel a sense of control, a sense of purpose, a sense of lack of, you're not a victim anymore, even of your own circumstances. And of course, it'll make the circumstances out there that happen to you less impactful, because you can decide, you can choose how you respond. You can't choose how you feel, and you can't choose those original thoughts that come up. Those are automatic. You can't erase your limbic system. You can only choose what to do after the fact. But if you don't even know your limbic system is running your show, you're screwed, because you don't even know that's happening. I work with lots of clients. They just don't even understand that's what's going on. I mean, your limbic system is making these decisions. And once you start to make small decisions like the cold shower and plunges and things like this, that system's going to get weaker, and your frontal lobe is going to get stronger. And it's the absolute key.
Yeah, and last comment on that too. Like I went out kiteboarding here in South Padre, Texas, and it's been super warm, been super nice. And then we got a northerly came in, so it got super windy yesterday, and it got cold for Texas. It was probably in the upper 50s, low 60s. But you go out in the water, and it's 24 miles an hour. It gets a little chilly, but I've done it enough where I'm like, okay, can I actually go out? There isn't going to be many people there. There's only a handful of us. And it was super fun. The wind was great. The conditions were not ideal at all. But it's like, can you even enjoy those types of conditions? That's probably one of the funnest sessions I've had in the past year. You know, it was super windy, wind was great, everyone was having fun. You come off the water and you come in, you're like, oh man, I'm really cold now. But when you're doing it, you don't really notice it so much either. So I think there's a long-term transfer of that skill to all other aspects, whether it's doing high intensity exercise, doing, trying to learn something that's frustrating that you're trying to, kind of, I don't want to say force your way through, but kind of grit your teeth and make it through. I think that's very useful life skills. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's all the payoff, right? It's thinking, how am I going to feel after this? And how did I feel other times? Because think, again, the pain of regret of Jim Rohn, that's exactly what it is. Imagine what you would do if you backed out of these things.
Yeah.
How are you going to feel about yourself? And these are things to help motivate yourself. How am I going to feel? I'm going to feel not good. I'm not going to feel happy. And changes in our beliefs occur after taking action. They don't occur very well through debating and motivating and pumping yourself up. That's the key. Like people with phobias, this is what we do. You can talk for 2 years about, let's say you have a phobia of driving because they had a car accident, about how safe driving is, et cetera, et cetera. It's not really effective. Just getting them back in the car, no matter what their mind says, and just slowly increasing. Just like training. It's like, I can't work out. Well, let's start off lifting 1 pound. Okay, now it's 2 pounds. And boom, quite quickly you can build up strength, you can build up mental strength, and these people will get over it. Basically, our beliefs change with action. They don't change otherwise, like in terms of just trying to change your thoughts, your motivation, watching inspiring videos. Action creates change.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Tell us more about your book and where people can reach out to you.
So my book's on Amazon. It's called Achieve. Subtitles: Find Out Who You Are, What You Really Want, and How to Make It Happen. It's kind of exactly what the book is. Exactly that. It's about learning your personality, your values. It's really about a self-exploration. What are your talents and skills? And then coming up with like a mission statement, and then coming up with your goals. Often these books do it the opposite way. And then at the very end, we have a big chapter on what to do on a day-to-day basis. Everything from, dopamine problems where you can't stop scrolling on social media. I think there's a new Netflix thing that I haven't seen yet, but talks about the same thing. We've known this for a long time, how this we can get into loops and what to do about it. So there's that. I have my performance website is called friesenperformance.com. That's more where there's a new one coming out called drchrisfriesen.com. That's more for my kind of corporate speaking, et cetera. It's still being developed at this time. The last website is my clinical website, which is called Niagara neuropsychology.com, which has lots of information on neuromodulation, the brain, photobiomodulation, neurofeedback, biofeedback, brain mapping, this kind of thing. And of course, I'm on Facebook. If you look up Friesen Performance or Niagara Neuropsychology, Twitter is Friesen Perform and Niagara Neuro. And LinkedIn, I think it's under my name. But those are the best ways to find me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I would highly encourage people to reach out to you. I really appreciated our conversation and you sharing all your wealth of knowledge and everything today. That was really awesome. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Cool. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Dr. Chris Friesen. Really appreciate him and all of his time coming on here. Big shout out to my buddy Ted Rice. Check out his podcast, Legendary Life, for the referral to the doctor here. Enjoyed the conversation. Got to get all neuro on this one, which was super fun. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can check out the Flex Diet certification. Go to flexdiet.com, FLEXDIET, for all of the information. And if you're on the newsletter and you're listening to this in October or maybe early November of 2020, I'll give you a hint that I'm working on another course on the physiologic flexibility. So if you're on the newsletter, that's where you're going to get all of the information on that. It's free to get on the newsletter. Go to flexdiet.com, go to get on the wait list, and that will automatically put you on the wait list for the Flex Diet Cert and add you to the newsletter, which is where about 90% of my original content goes out to, and it's free to hop on. And if you don't like it for any reason, you can unsubscribe. That's okay. I'm not going to hunt you down. So go to flexdiet.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, or even if you didn't, leave me some feedback. Any feedback is useful to make it a better show. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next time.